The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time this cycle, and Ambassador Zixathera of the crystalline hegemony was growing increasingly agitated. Her translucent form flickered with anxious orange hues as she addressed the assembly. The situation on Kepler 442b has escalated beyond all projections, she announced, her voice resonating through the vast chamber. The Void Stalker has claimed another settlement. That makes 17 colonies across 10 worlds in the past solar rotation. Murmurs of distress rippled through the assembled representatives. The Void Stalker was a name spoken in hushed tones across civilized space, a creature so ancient and terrible that entire star systems had been abandoned at the mere rumor of its presence. Standing 12 meters tall with obsidian scales that seemed to devour light itself, it possessed claws capable of rending through titanium steel hulls in a roar that could shatter reinforced glass from kilometers away. "What of the Terran representative?" asked General Korth of the military coalition, his forearms gesturing dismissively. "Their species claims to be warriors." The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the small figure seated in the human delegation section. Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist and Earth's newest ambassador, stood slowly. At barely 1.7 meters tall and weighing perhaps 60 kilograms, she appeared laughably fragile compared to the towering aliens surrounding her. "We'll handle it," she said simply. The chamber erupted in what could generously be called laughter from species capable of the sound, and various forms of derision from those that weren't. "Handle it?" Zixthar's form shifted to a deep red. "This creature has survived 3 extinction events, conquered 10 worlds, and feeds on the fear of sentient beings. Your species has barely achieved faster than light travel." Dr. Chen adjusted her glasses, a distinctly human gesture that many in the chamber had learned to associate with what humans called patience wearing thin. "We said we'll handle it." 3 standard days later, Dr. Chen stood alone on the blasted plains of Kepler 442b, armed with nothing more than a standard field kit, a tablet, and what appeared to be a small pouch of some organic material. The abandoned colony stretched out before her, its buildings reduced to twisted metal and crystallized sand. The Void Stalker materialized from the shadows between heartbeats, a nightmare made manifest. Its 6 red eyes fixed on the tiny human figure, and it released the bone-chilling roar that had preceded the destruction of civilizations. The sound wave hit Dr. Chen like a physical force, but she merely steadied herself and consulted her tablet. "Interesting," she muttered, making notes. "Subsonic frequency suggests possible echolocation component. Territorial display behavior consistent with pack hunters, but solitary nature indicates..." She looked up at the creature, which had paused its advance, apparently confused by her lack of terror. "You're not actually a monster, are you?" Dr. Chen said conversationally. "You're just a very, very big predator who's been alone for a very, very long time." The Void Stalker tilted its massive head, an oddly canine gesture that would have been endearing if performed by something that didn't possess fangs the size of sword blades. Dr. Chen slowly reached into her pouch and withdrew what looked like a standard protein bar. She unwrapped it carefully, the crackling of the wrapper abnormally loud in the sudden silence. "You know what I think?" she continued, breaking off a piece of the bar. "I think you're what happens when an apex predator gets separated from its pack. You're not evil. You're just lonely. And probably really, really hungry for something that doesn't taste like fear and metal." She tossed the piece of protein bar toward the creature. It landed with a small thud in the sand between them. The Void Stalker stared at the offering for a long moment, then at Dr. Chen, then back at the food. With movement surprisingly delicate for something the size of a small spacecraft, it lowered its great head and sniffed the protein bar. The change was immediate and startling. The creature's rigid posture relaxed, its glowing eyes dimmed to a softer amber, and it made a sound that could only be described as a whimper. It gently licked the protein bar, then looked back at Dr. Chen with an expression that somehow conveyed desperate hope. "There we go," Dr. Chen said softly, pulling out another bar. "You're just a big puppy, aren't you? A very big, very scary puppy who's been having trouble making friends." Over the next several hours, Dr. Chen fed the Void Stalker an entire case of protein bars, specially formulated with nutrients that her research suggested would appeal to carbon-based apex predators. With each feeding, the creature became more docile, more playful. When Dr. Chen scratched behind what might charitably be called its ears, the void stalker made a sound suspiciously like purring. When she threw a piece of debris for it to chase, it bounded after the object with all the enthusiasm of an Earth retriever, despite weighing approximately 40 tons. The real breakthrough came when the creature, apparently overwhelmed by this unprecedented experience of kindness, rolled over onto its back, exposing its vulnerable belly in the ultimate gesture of trust and submission. Dr. Chen looked down at the galaxy's most feared predator, now lying belly up in the sand with its tongue lolling out, and smiled. "Good boy," she said, and meant it. The phrase seemed to trigger something fundamental in the creature's psychology. It rolled back onto its feet and began following Dr. Chen around like an enormous, terrifying shadow, but a friendly one. The Emergency Galactic Council session that followed was considerably more subdued than the previous one. "You befriended it?" Ambassador Zixathara's form had shifted to a confused purple. "His name is Midnight," Dr. Chen reported, consulting her tablet. "He's actually a highly intelligent social creature who's been exhibiting destructive behavior due to severe isolation trauma. With proper care and socialization, he should make an excellent addition to our interspecies cooperation initiatives." General Korth leaned forward with all four arms. "Are you saying that the most feared predator in known space was simply lonely?" "Lonely, hungry, and in desperate need of a good belly rub," Dr. Chen confirmed. "It turns out that most problems have surprisingly simple solutions if you approach them with empathy instead of fear." From somewhere, outside the council chambers, came a sound like controlled thunder, Midnight's version of a happy bark as he played with a cargo container that the maintenance crew had given him as a toy. "This is impossible," muttered the representative from the warrior caste of Rigel. "How does a species barely out of its planetary cradle succeed where our greatest military minds failed?" Dr. Chen shrugged, a gesture that had become familiar to the Council over the past months of humanity's membership. "We're good with strays," she said simply. "Always have been." As if to punctuate her point, Midnight's massive head appeared at one of the chamber's viewing ports, his tail wagging with enough force to shake the entire station. Several representatives instinctively ducked, but Dr. Chen just waved. "Good boy, Midnight. I'll be out to play fetch in a few minutes." The apex predator of 10 worlds gave what could only be described as a happy yip and bounded away to wait for his human. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to become a much friendlier place.